Namaskar doston, welcome all friends, welcome to Ansarkari, and today we are taking up a very important topic which will be relevant for all the coming examinations in different forms, that is COP26 and its outcomes. So COP, that is Conference of Parties, that means all different groups and countries are there together and then they are coming up for a very important agenda. So COP comes under UNFCCC. We have already discussed in one of our other videos. That is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which was formed in 1994. And UNFCCC was established to work towards stabilization of greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere. Okay, the key word here is stabilization. Please answer, do you think that instead of stabilization there must be complete elimination? Is it possible? Is it feasible? Is it realistic? So COP is the apex decision making authority of UNFCCC. यानी जो भी काम होगा COP is gonna do that. So COP members have been meeting every year since 1995. That's how UNFCCC have 198 parties including India, China and the US. The presidency, when we say, it rotates among 5 UN regional groups. Okay, remember 5 regional groups, not 5 permanent members. So groups are Africa, Asia, Latin America and the Caribbean, Central and Eastern Europe, Western Europe and others. That's how there are 5 United Nations regional groups. So COP26, let's come to that point. What have been its achievements? So there have been global and country targets. So Glasgow summit, it has urged countries to strengthen their 2030 targets by COP27. COP27, which is going to take place in Egypt in 2022. Now the summit targeted global warming not to exceed 1.5 degrees Celsius. And more than 140 countries, they have announced target dates. What they have announced? Target dates. That means more commitment. That means more determination for bringing emissions down to net zero. So it's a great move forward than the previous COP. Now, there is a concept of carbon neutral. So let's understand that. So the concept of carbon footprint is intricately related with the concept of being carbon neutral. So that means on one hand we see these are the amount of carbon dioxide emitted through electromagnetic radiations, I mean to say communications or even aviation or transport or residential and commercial activities and so on, apart from use of fossil fuels and other emitting sources. On the other hand, we have to reduce carbon dioxide and offset it by solar energy, wind energy, use of electric vehicles, bringing more and more trees and planting more and more trees and creation of forests both in urban and those areas where they have not been possible, I mean to say urban forest and even in another terms artificial forests, use of light efficiency, use of such mechanisms and such equipments which are going to minimize emission of carbon dioxide. So the achievement is significant in context of Paris Agreement when we say that they have agreed to bring down the level of emission of CO2. The developing countries in Paris agreements did not agree to reduce emissions. Okay, they did not agree to reduce the emissions, but they had only agreed that emission intensity of GDP will be reduced. Emission intensity of GDP means that how much you are going to work towards manufacturing and other areas of activity where lot of energy requirement is there. So the intensity of GDP they have agreed upon that we will try to reduce, but not the overall reduction in emissions. It depends on the area, it depends on the population, it depends on the country. So India, for example, at Glasgow, it has announced that the net zero target will be of 2070. Because it's the first time that India has agreed. India had never accepted to reduce emissions. Now India has agreed that by 2070, our emissions will be net zero. Carbon emissions will be net zero. So this is a kind of a breakthrough. That is why it is called breakthrough agenda. The the cooperative effort of different countries to accelerate the development and deployment of clean technologies and sustainable solutions. What it will include green power, it will include road transport, steel and hydrogen, and so on. This is what is the key future goal. So whether it is MSME sector for India, whether it is global value chains and positions we want to create, whether it is about India being a semiconductor global hub, or when we talk about other energy intensity like fertilizers, cement production, even iron, steel, and so on, India is going to move forward in using technologies apart from auto sector and other areas. So a development that emerged out of COP26, it emerged out of COP26 but outside the COP process. Okay, it was this is COP, so you can say now this is the whole concept or the subject. That is how we can say this Glasgow breakthrough agenda. It came emerged out of the COP26 discussions but outside the COP process, and it has been endorsed by India and other more than 40 countries. So what have been discussed as such? So the key word, another keyword here is phasing down of coal consumption. Phasing down and phasing out of fossil fuels. Phasing down yani kam karna, phasing out yani complete elimination. This is the first time the coal has been explicitly mentioned in any of the COP decisions. Never ever before the question have been about coal. But why? Because for a country like India, our economies and our livelihoods and even daily life is dependent upon coal, whether it is electricity and other kind of power utilities. So European countries, they have pushed hard for its phase out. They wanted phase out, whereas developing countries, they resisted it, like India. They said no phasing out, we can only phase down. So middle path is phase down of coal based power. Phase down. Now in terms of adaptation, they created a two-year work program to define global goal on adaptation. 2-year program on global goal adaptation. So there have been a long pending demand of the developing countries and the Paris Agreement to define such goal. Define कीजिए how the world will be adapting. So Glasgow Climate Pact has asked developed countries to at least double the money being provided for adaptation by 2025. So from 2019 level to 2025, money should be 2 times at least. Even I can say this is also less, but that's how the situation and position is right now. Infrastructure for resilient island states, IRIS. So India has launched the Infrastructure for Resilient Island States initiative for developing the infrastructure of small island nations. For small island nations, so that they have the minimum impact of climate change, because they are the one who are going to bear all the brunt in the beginning. So it becomes very crucial because these small island nations remain the most vulnerable countries. As I just said, they have the biggest threat from climate change. They face existential threat, यानी कि उनका समूल उनका जो एग्जिस्टेंस है उन आने वाले क्लाइमेट चेंज की वजह से उनका समूल नाश हो सकता है, बिल्कुल खत्म हो सकते हैं वो. So Aries is part of Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. I repeat, CDRI, Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. So this initiative will make easy for SIDS, that is uh, uh, for to mobilize technology, finance and necessary information in a faster and more effective way. So small island uh, development initiative, which we are talking about, this is very important. Small island countries like Maldives, so small island nations, they are in this way, it is a kind of a diplomatic gesture from Indian side also. This is a part of their foreign policy initiative also in another ways. One sun, one world, one grid. So there is a new global green grids initiative, that is GGI, Global Grid Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid, OSOWOG. So what is the goal? Tap solar energy, not just within a country but across the borders. Large solar power stations and wind farms in the best locations, linked together by continental scale grids, crossing national boundaries. Whole world becomes one global village. Over 80 countries have endorsed One Sun Declaration. A very important and a crucial initiative. The goal is also to end deforestation. That is COP initiative. COP 26 initiative is that there must be ending to deforestation by 2030, so that to slow climate change, slow down by 2030. But there have been certain setbacks. We can say voluntary targets as far as concerned, no mechanism for enforcement or penalties for non-compliance. Many targets are conditional on the availability of adequate financial support. There comes the role of developed countries. Failure in securing climate finance. So it is only able to push developed countries only up to a certain extent. It is only requesting and urging developed countries that please provide adequate climate finance. Only finance will bring technology, and only technology will bring power for adaptation and, in worst cases, mitigation. It failed also to firmly secure funding commitments from developed nations, as I just said. Uncertainty about details and actions, how it is going to be applied actually. Many countries did not provide any details or specific actions to be taken, and which would determine the actual trajectory to net zero, which creates uncertainty about what will be achieved. Secondly, unequal distribution of carbon budgets. So the world's three largest emitters, China, US and the Europe, which accounts for 30% of the world's population and take up 78% of the carbon budget. So you see inequality. And US with 4.2% of the world population would take up only 14.2% of the budget, and Europe with 6.8 would take up 9.5. So how fair it is, I leave it up to your understanding. Do write in the comment box or share your thinking, because without thinking you also not gonna learn in your best way. So thank you for being engaging and sharing your mind with me on different topics. Please get back for any doubts or any kind of feedback. Keep on working smart and hard, because there are no shortcuts in the world, and we are always there to support you in the best possible way, because you deserve the best. Thank you very much.